So my work with learning dispositions was part of a national research project around Australia where we were looking at the implementation of habits of mind, thinking dispositions, into schools and classrooms. And one of the models we found really useful was to consider how these dispositions fit with everything else we're trying to do in schools. And so I want to share this model with you in the hope that it gives you a little bit of insight and a little bit of a way of shaping the way we work with thinking dispositions in our schools and classrooms. Of course, we've got our content. Okay, we have to teach our content. There are some people out there that will say, just teach kids how to think, and I don't subscribe to that. If students left our classrooms without a basic understanding of key moments in history, the scientific method, basic literacy and numeracy skills, then I think we would have failed them. My rule of thumb is that we can probably put aside 2/3 of the curriculum and do 1/3 of it really well and really deeply. But that's a whole other conversation to have. Interesting conversation to have right at this point in time though, because whenever we have that conversation about what do we remove from the curriculum, we say we can't be done, we can't take anything out. At this point in time, where we have to take things out because of the time lost to COVID-19, raises some interesting questions about how do we address that. In any case, we've got our content, we teach something, but we also have to teach a way of interacting with it. The thinking skills, the tools, the strategies, the techniques. Now, whether they're traditional thinking skills of logic and comparison and analysis and things like that, or whether they're more modern thinking skills like the 6 thinking hats or the thinking shoes or the thinking keys or whatever else it might be. The underlying premise here is that these give us a way to act on our content. It gives us a way to manipulate it, to interact with it. And for a long time that was the thinking curriculum. And then we started talking about dispositions, and specifically in my context the habits of mind came along. And we said, are they another thinking tool? Are these things like managing impulsivity and persisting and things like this just another tool? And we realised they weren't. That where the habits of mind and thinking dispositions sat were around the outside here. That I could teach you all the thinking tools in the world. Say, I could teach you about open and close questions, about leading questions, about Bloom's taxonomy, about all these questioning techniques and tools. But if you didn't have a questioning disposition, then you didn't use those tools to act on the content in the first place. And when we got this picture together, we were pretty happy. We thought this ties it together. This is why we're doing these dispositions. It's to give the inclination to use the tools to act on our content. And a teacher came up to me in a workshop and said, James, we love the habits of mind at our school. We're using them all the time. We're using them in our Year 8 SOS class. And we're using them to analyse some of the great crimes in history, things like the Great Train Robbery and things like that. And the kids are learning so much and it's amazing and all the rest of it. And we just stopped and went, you're using them to analyse some of the great crimes in history? Is that really the best context to do that in? And we realised that when we looked at dispositions, the dispositions themselves were value-free. Some of the most successful criminals, if you can put those two words together, behaved very, very intelligently, had very, very sophisticated thinking dispositions, but applied them in a way that we would argue is not what we're pursuing in schools. And so we realised we were missing a layer to this diagram. And the layer was here around the outside, about our principles, our ethics, our virtues, our fruits of the spirit, if you will. And what they did was provide direction, provide purpose to the dispositions to select our tools and act on our content. And when we realised that we could put the whole picture of our curriculum together like this, we found it a very, very powerful diagram and one that was very useful. And it gave us a few insights as well. That when we walk into most classrooms, we realised that we tend to focus on those middle 2 circles. It's all about the content and the thinking. But when you walk into a school and look at their website and look at your charter documents and things like that, the big statements that this is what we do in schooling, is the outer two circles. It's all about principles and values and the dispositions that go with them. And so what we started to realise is that if we were going to work successfully with dispositions and with the values and ethics and virtues and so forth, is we needed to select our content and our thinking tools in a way that gave us access to these larger ideas. And pulling the content together and asking ourselves, how do we address the learning needs of these students, the things we have to teach them, but address them in a way that allows us at the same time to develop these dispositions and these virtues, became a very powerful model to help us see clearly what it is we were trying to do, and more importantly perhaps, a pathway to do it. Because we needed to start thinking about these dispositions and these virtues as learning intentions in the same way as we think about our literacy and our numeracy and our science as learning intentions. We had to design curriculum to access these outer two rings as well. So I hope this model gives you a little bit of an insight into the way the dispositions fit into our curriculum and some of the work we might be able to do down the track around that. So I look forward to talking to you soon. If you've got any questions, send me an email down below.